Intense new video shows the moment Iranian missiles hit an airbase in Jordan, killing 2 U.S. service members. Both members have since been identified. 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan of Hawaii and 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez of Texas. The strikes that killed them came just hours before President Trump said a third service member was killed during the controlled detonation of an unexploded ordnance from an Iranian drone. The deaths bring the total number of U.S. military personnel killed since the start of the war to 17.
Last night marked the 9th straight night of U.S. attacks in Iran, and President Trump says he isn't planning to slow down. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Iran is using the Strait of Hormuz as leverage, quote, against the world.
We're going to continue to respond if the door opens to diplomacy. If the guys that want to do something productive for Iran win and take control of that system or take control of the negotiations, that'll be a very positive development. That's not where we are tonight, unfortunately.
Meanwhile, the New York Times reports the U.S. is sending more warplanes to the Middle East.
Joining us now to talk about this violent weekend and where we are headed is retired military Colonel Mark Cancian. Colonel, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the program.
All right, so we want to start here. Obviously, we had a period, right, where there was a ceasefire, and now attacks are escalating. We've had 9 straight days of this and the deaths of 3 U.S. service members. Let's just talk about what Iran's military capabilities are like right now when allegedly they had been decimated towards the beginning. What are we learning about their abilities to still fight?
Well, what we're learning is their intentions and their willingness to suffer under attack in order to continue the struggle. Their military has been badly damaged. Their Navy is essentially eliminated, a lot of their Air Force gone. But they retain enough capability, the drones, some anti-ship missiles, to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. And as a result, they have tremendous leverage with the United States and the world economy.
Colonel, it's clear Iran is not going down without a fight. What do you think the U.S. objective is? We keep hearing, to disable, to, decrease their limitations. Are we close to a full-on, war again, like we were originally? Or are we just going to keep strategically hitting small targets?
Well, the U.S. objectives have, I think, narrowed to 2. One is the nuclear program, where they were close to a deal, and the Strait of Hormuz, where they are far apart. Iran claims sovereignty over the strait, including the ability to impose tolls. The United States and the rest of the world, really, is adamant that the strait needs to be kept open. And there doesn't seem to be any common ground there. And as a result, I think the conflict will continue. We've seen this not just tit for tat, which it started off at, but escalation. And now we've seen an additional escalation with the U.S. hitting a broader variety of targets and the Iranians firing back.
Colonel, we heard from the New York Times we're sending more warplanes over to the Middle East. What does this continued escalation look like? More airstrikes? We don't think there'll be a ground invasion. Also, on the same point, should Americans expect more casualties?
Well, on your last question, the answer is yes. And tragically, this is a war and casualties happen. Now, the U.S. has been able to defend many of its bases, but occasionally the Iranians will get a missile through. So unfortunately, if the conflict continues, we're going to see more casualties. Many people ask about a ground war. Right now, of course, there isn't one. I think it's conceivable. You could see one over the islands. There are 4,500 Marines and paratroopers who could seize one of the islands either in the Gulf, like Karg Island, or in the Strait. I don't think you're going to see anything on the mainland. The Iranian land forces are basically untouched, and they number up to 1 million. It's way too dangerous to land on the mainland.
Well, Colonel, this war has been anything but predictable. But if you were to think about what happens maybe in the next week or 2, what do you see happening?
Well, as of this morning, I think we're going to see more of this back and forth, these strikes. There hasn't been an outreach for negotiations from Iran. We heard that from Secretary Rubio that the United States might be open to that, or would be open, I think, but no indication from the Iranians that they're ready to negotiate. It's important to keep in mind, though, that the U.S. has been launching about 80-ish strikes per day. Now, at the height of the war, the United States was launching about 350 strikes a day, and the Israelis another 200. So the intensity, although substantial, is nowhere near what it was during the height of the air war.
Colonel, just about out of time. You mentioned earlier we're nowhere near being on the same page, ideologically speaking, with Iran when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. They feel like they want to control. The rest of the world says that you can't have control. How do you agree? I mean, how do you end up coming to peace? Do you obliterate an entire nation and all their forces? How does this end?
Well, that's a great question. And right now, I think the United States is trying to use its air power to reduce Iranian capabilities in the Strait sufficiently that cargo could get through it. We might see major combat operations to clear the Strait, although it would be a large operation. There'd be casualties. But otherwise, I don't see any common ground. And it's important as a precedent. There are many straits around the world, Strait of Malacca, for example, where countries might want to exert sovereignty. That would be very damaging for the world economy.
Again, retired Marine Colonel Mark Hansen joining us this morning. Colonel, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on the program.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.